if you were told, like me, since you were small, that crying is babyish and not welcome, that emotions should be pushed down, that we should put on a brave face, that anger was a bad thing and it was also not welcome, then it's quite likely that you are doing that in your day-to-day now. And as big emotions rise, it can be really challenging to find spaces where they're accepted and validated, find people or places that celebrate and that can hold space and support you through those dense and sticky emotions without trying to tell you to change them, for them to go away, for them to have a story related to them, for them to be, expressed in a particular way, in a particular time sequence and time length. And so when we have these emotions, which is quite normal human behavior, the emotion part is what connects us to love and compassion and our humanity, humility, gratitude, understanding of other human beings, of ourselves. The emotions is like a really great, incredible pathway and passageway into living and being well and healthy and whole and in a state of thriving. So when we are pushing down our emotions and these places that we've been told are too big, that there's no place for them, they're too sticky, then what happens is those sticky emotions, those dense emotions, they can't rise. They actually get pushed right deep down into the very pits and the very darkness of who we are. And as you keep pushing them down and pushing them down and pushing them down over many patternings and experiences and cycles and years of doing that, when emotion rises, it's going to flood your system. It's going to be so overwhelming. It's going to be so much all at once, because once you touch on that well of all that condensed and pushed down and hidden emotions, when we come into contact with our body from an experience or a triggering of a trauma or an experience or a relationship that has our body's recognition or body pattern to push these emotions and how we're feeling down, when that is touched on, then we actually touch on the whole pool of all the emotions of every experience, that we have pushed down into this dark place within ourselves that we don't access often. The reason why I say this is because this is also too where cellular memory is held, where ancestral lineage trauma is held, where cultural trauma is held. And unless we're accessing and creating spaces and places and safety to be able to dip our toe into these experiences, into these felt senses within the body, then all we do is we just continue to put a lid on this space, and they just continue to become too overwhelming, too difficult, too much to even put a toe into. And we become so detached from who we are, so detached from our experiences as humans, so detached from the natural rhythms within our body, and the natural rhythms within our emotional system, even within our cognitive. All of it becomes quite disrupted, and dis-ease starts to take seeds in the body, in the psyche, in who we are. It's really important when we are doing trauma-informed work, when we're working with the body, when we're working somatically, when we're working with the nervous system, that these places, when we're touching on them, that their lids are lifted just very slightly. So just kind of let some steam off, just really slightly, so it doesn't flood and overwhelm the system. The other point is that to have places and spaces and people who can actually hold space for us while we're touching on these really intimate and vulnerable parts of ourselves and start to develop and build a relationship with these parts of ourselves can be challenging to find, because we're so conditioned to move people out of these places. We're so conditioned to have them fit and look a certain way and for them to have a very certain sequence, and that's just not the case. Often when people come to places and spaces where and they have these emotions where they're needing to be held and seen, and they need that safety, what they're needing is you to sit there as an open, grounded space holder that just allows them to have their process without you indoctrinating your ideologies or your storylines or your experiences, or pushing them onto that person and shaping that person's experience of their felt sense. So this is why somatic therapy and somatic therapists and people who are doing nervous system work are trained in holding these spaces for people to come along and touch on these denser and more difficult and vulnerable and intimate spaces within ourselves, so you can start to build a new pathway of how you actually show up and express and be with your emotional and physical body when you're having these very big, dense, sticky, emotional responses.